Good afternoon, everybody. This is the last Freelance Teacher Podcast videocast of the school year of 2016-2017. Why? Because it's the last day of school today. It's the 23rd of June, and I just want to say thank you to my legions of fans who have been following and listening and playing their role in the conversation. Not much to add on this last day other than some of the usual things that I read and watch and listen to that I think would be beneficial. Also, I'm going to make a few comments on how disturbingly easy it is to shape the human mind. How the idea of reason and evidence are not major role players in things, that the major things are emotion. But without getting too heavy, just the school year was a solid one. I work with 14 and 15-year-olds, ninth grade freshmen, and as usual, things were solid. I had a couple of rough spots. I had one rough class, and I guess it was my turn. I had the quote-unquote mean girls class, and it was uncomfortable and not an enjoyable 45 minutes, to be honest. And the problem wasn't the lack of dedication to studies, the zero levels of intellectual curiosity, and the complete disconnect to reality. I'm used to that. What was troublesome was, or to use a current word in the progressive campus these days, is it was problematic, or there were issues. And what it was the willingness to destroy others just for no reason other than to do it. So if I had a new student in class, particularly a new girl, those girls, as soon as the other boys started showing interest in them, would savagely go after them. Usually in a social media whisper campaign, make fun of, snide comment type thing. Not so much in my class because I've got a big mouth and I swat a lot of that stuff away and I see it. But throughout the day, it caused a problem. One girl had to transfer out of the class. One strong girl came in. She was just, her strength was her silence. And she sat there silently, and nothing anyone did had any effect, and it wound up stopping. Any kind of abuse she encountered just disappeared. But that was one of the interesting parts of the year. The other one is that I want to share with you outside of the school year is I've been listening to the Brett Weinstein Evergreen State College material on YouTube and in the podcast, and I highly recommend it. Weinstein is the professor who in a very reasoned, cogent, calm, nonviolent way, said that the day of absence that had been going on in campus for decades up there in the Pacific Northwest, when they request that people of certain races not show up, that they start treading on a dangerous ground, in the sense that Weinstein is Jewish, and when someone says, "Hey, you guys, you're kind. You shouldn't be here today. That's not where you should be." He said, "Yeah, that's not okay. It's different than if one group decides to exit, like the black students had been doing that. The people of color had been leaving Evergreen State for the previous years in kind of like an echo of one of these plays where that's what the play is about, where all the people of color leave the town for a day." And so they had been kind of acting that out every year as a day of absence. And they decided to flip it this year and say, you know what, we think it should be the other way around, so white people don't show up. And he said, that's different. If you choose to leave, that's one thing. But when you kind of implicitly suggest that a certain kind of people not show up, that is very different. And in an email and in a talk and in his communications, he said this. And the loony left, the regressive left, the progressive oddballs who call themselves liberals these days have savagely gone after him. They have completely gone after this guy. And it's funny because I recommend the talks with him. Gad Sad on The Sad Truth on YouTube. Listen to the talk that he and Weinstein have had. There's a great, almost 3-hour long discussion between Joe Rogan and Weinstein. Very, very good. Dave Rubin on The Rubin Report. Same thing. when you listen to this guy speak, this Weinstein, he is reasoned, cogent. He says, here's what I believe, and the irony is off the charts. Weinstein is one of these global warming, progressive guys who is, textbook academia type. The issue is the issue is really one thing. He has gone against the social justice warrior cult that has infiltrated campus. And to kind of connect this to my school year, I had one section of seniors and I warned them. I said, you're going to be encountering this at the campus. And now I have no white students, so I'm not trying to tell the white kids, you got to be careful, and you can't say anything that anyone might misconstrue as racist, and the climate is bad. And no. I don't have white students. I don't need to help them navigate anything at all because they're not there. I do have independent thinking students. And I told them, I said, it doesn't matter that you're a black man or a black woman. That is irrelevant. If you go against the cult of, I hate to use the word progressive or liberal because these people are neither progressive nor liberal. They're a cult of campus lunacy, the cult of multicultural diversity, postmodern babble. I think it's Dave Rubin and a few others who call them the regressive left, and that's probably the best label. I said, I said this to my seniors, if you go against these people, it doesn't matter that you're a minority coming from the crappy neighborhood school. They're going to go after you. They're going to pillory you. Be careful. And Weinstein is, I guess they thought he was an easy target. And he keeps coming at it with reasoned, progressive, actually liberal viewpoints and saying we can't do this. This is a difficult, dangerous road for academia to go through. And there are a lot of parallels between him and Jordan Peterson. There are a few parallels between him and Thaddeus Russell. So they're really, really valuable. And I recommend those three things to watch if you're an upperclassman in high school or in your first couple years at college, because Weinstein provides what was a truly liberal outlook on life. And listening to him speak, it's like being in a time warp. It's like listening to the liberal folks with whom I grew up. And I don't agree with a lot of their values. I disagree with their economics. I find their faith in government to be somewhat naive, but you can speak with them and you have great debates with these people, and that's it really gives you a lens into that. And you juxtapose that, someone like Weinstein, with what's going on in campus today with these so-called liberal types, and it really shows you how far academia and the left have fallen. And the last point is, I should let you know, on social media, I'm in the same usual argument. Somebody posted that healthcare was a right, and I should know better after all this time. I should know not to comment on these things. But I gave up my usual line to that foolishness, where I said, well, if healthcare is a right, then those people who provide healthcare are slaves. And my logic is irrefutable. If healthcare is a right, then thou shalt have healthcare. I mean, there's no debate. It's a right. It should arrive. It should be there. So those people who provide it are slaves. They have no choice. Or you can't, if it's a right, you can't say, if you're a nurse or a dentist or a CNA, no, I am not going to provide you healthcare. I don't think so. I can't, but if it's a right, they have to do it. This is irrefutable. Yet it's, I got two responses. One of them was a very questioning, and a high school friend, a woman who lives down south, and she was, as usual, inquisitive and wondering where the wording came from, and asking other questions about, well, if this is the case, if A is slavery, then wouldn't B be slavery? And I basically said yes. Good discussion type stuff. And the other response was, kind of like incredulous, like, what do you mean it's slavery? Are the people in France and public school teachers, and coming up with all of these systems that don't relate to what I was saying. So And so I kind of have to say, right, well, hold on a minute, what you're coming up with to refute my argument is not an argument. You're coming up with systems in France and other ideas about how government should control healthcare, and saying that shows that my statement is ridiculous. And it's kind of like saying, we're talking about A and B, and you bring up C as a counter. But the end of the story is, and my final comment for this year's videocast series for the 16-17 school year is, again, the disturbing notion that you have to realize that people are not guided by reason and evidence, and they are guided by their emotions. And if you're part of a political party, whatever that political party says, most people will just go in lockstep. They won't think for themselves. And you see this now a lot. My own personal thought on these, one of my few original ideas is, I'm in firm belief that the mainstream media is saying nothing about the wretched foreign policy of the Trump administration, where they're continuing with the bombs, and they're continuing with the blood and the guns and the wars and all the stuff in the Middle East. And I'm convinced that mainstream media is silent on it, because even they know, in all of their sickness and all of their sick world and what's big corporate media nowadays, that a junior high school student would stand up and say, well, wait a minute. Why are you complaining about drone attacks in the Middle East and bombs in the Middle East and all of these things when you were silent about it for 8 years? And I really think, and these are people who, simply because Trump is a quote-unquote Republican, whatever that means, I'm thoroughly convinced that the mainstream media is saying nothing about it for two reasons. One is the military-industrial complex controls a lot, and they probably have their claws in corporate media as well. And the other one is that they know they're just going to look like fools. That even a 14-year-old would be like, wait, did these things happen all of a sudden? And even if they, imagine a freshman hearing about, the horrible Trump wars, right? And they start to actually look. When did this stuff start? Whoa, Trump is starting all these wars in the Middle East. And then they start to look back. And I think the thoughts in the corporate media rooms are so hard about that. They're like, wait, we can't have a 15-year-old actually look into what the United States federal government is doing with war. And we can't afford to have them actually find out that this has been going on all during the Barack Obama administration. So rather than do that, they just say nothing. They just stay silent. And it's this weird agenda stuff, this emotionally driven craziness that's going on in the world today. And I hope I did my small part to try to wake up a few students and get them to see what's going on in the world today in a true lens, in a reasoned and evidence-backed manner. So it's been a great school year. We'll do this periodically with these videocasts. I'll continue over the summer. Hopefully you have nothing going on in the summer and you can do what you would like to do, and you can continue working on things that will continue to satiate your intellectual curiosity. Take care. It's been a good year. Talk to you in a week or two. Have a good one.